Dave, hello everyone. Is Moonshire Bunscolmea. I'm Chynel. I'm a pre-K teacher, and this is a picture of my school back in Ireland. The school is a semi-rural on the outskirts of the city of Newry, and it's mainstream, which means that any parent can send their child to us if they deem that our setting fits their required learning needs. My problem of practice this semester was to examine the use of decodable text to support reading instruction. And these are simple texts that are designed for the beginning reader as they contain the letter sound relationships that the students have been learning. So for example, if the students know the sounds st, d, then they can blend and read the words, for example, man, mad, at, sad, sat. And these decodable texts are used to help develop rapid word recognition. You might know this scene from The Sound of Music. Well, when I was 9, I just wanted to be a governess like Maria, but I didn't have the singing voice. What captured my attention was how Maria incorporated the tried and tested ingredients of successful learning into her approach with the children. She had strong foundations, varied methods, clear goals, and a positive learning environment. And that's what I thought the successful teaching of reading was all about. Bring those tried and tested ingredients, mix in the joyful readings, sprinkle on the phonics, pour on the background knowledge, add these level texts, and then ta-da, reading would simply just happen. But the recipe was lacking. My goal has always been to design a classroom where all children gain strong foundations in early reading skills. But I was becoming to realise that I lacked a deeper understanding about how children really learn to read. I had begun to research the science of reading body of knowledge, and I wondered if its studies could provide valuable insights to help me shape my understanding in a better way. You see, I suspected that children were guessing, not really reading, and it was clear as the children were moving from year 1 to year 2 and 3 that our methods were not supported by decodable texts, the building blocks we lacked. A foundation unsteady, uncrumbling track, children yearning for fluency to fly on the page, but our code was fractured, literacy caged. Research pointed us to a missing key, 5 pillars of reading. Why couldn't we see the fluency falter and rhythm awry and reading score failures with an obvious why? If the problem were to be solved, well, I knew I was going to have the evidence I needed to champion the use of decodable text instruction and really build on our existing practices that were needed to scaffold those beginning readers. And if we could identify our strengths in provision through a reflective, universal design for learning lens, then we could reset the structure with active, purposeful, and motivated learning experiences. And I knew we could support skilled reading. And so I turned to the research to learn more about the problem. And in articles and podcasts, I learned that the methods for teaching reading that we had been instructed to use from my earliest days in the classroom were lacking some of the most fundamental elements for developing the reading brain. And it was a really sad realization. I suspected as a school community, we had work to do in understanding the simple view of reading model. And our existing practices were really fragmented. I just couldn't get a big picture of what was going on across the school. And I feared that staff still considered the teaching of reading to be solely the concern of early years and intervention strategies. And if these statements were true, then access to diverse learning was being denied. The path to reading instruction had to be unified and informed by the data I needed, as barriers to a one-size-fits-all approach conceded to failures in word recognition and rapid word recall. Could UDL guide us to unlocking a learning design that honoured diversity and helped us redefine the goals of our reading instruction? Well, my data plan was to create the inventory because I wanted to find out how we're currently using different types of text to scaffold learning to read, and then how these texts were represented in honouring student variability. And most importantly, I wanted to find out how we were leveraging these texts in reaching our reading goals. So we put together a Google form to catalogue the different types of instructional texts that were being used in early years. And along with 3 colleagues, we created a visual map of how these texts supported or didn't support our existing scope and sequence of phonics instruction, as the majority of our reading books were controlled vocabulary. To turn the data into usable knowledge and devise a solution for the problem of practice, I needed to understand more about how we could break through the barriers that we were creating by omitting decodable text instruction. So to decode the data, I studied the information in the data set. I returned to those articles and blogs and podcasts about the science of reading to help me make sense of what my data could be showing me. And I engaged in professional conversation with my colleagues on the emerging themes and how the implementation of the principles of UDL could possibly guide us with our solutions to the problem of practice. My first finding highlighted the need for a common language of understanding among the colleagues about the definition and purpose of decodable text. They're not just for intervention, they are a necessary step on the ladder to reading success. My second finding indicated that within our basal reading schemes, and these are the schemes that are bought in by our school to help the teaching of reading, that only 12% of them contain true decodable texts. The data that I was collecting was showing an imbalanced and unhelpful approach to the teaching of reading. And my third finding brought about concerns that by omitting these decodable texts, we were setting students up for a reading journey that lacked the essential elements of successful literacy instruction. We had a poor offering of varied modes for engagement. And therefore, the recommendations from the findings included creating a core team to source and appraise free and AI-generated decodable texts for immediate use in the classroom, and working with key leadership to bring about a school development plan for next year that champions decodable text instruction through professional development, through systematic instructional methods that would be school-wide, and then rigorous monitoring practices. So what have I learned from the process? Well, as teachers, we cling to the familiar, the story we've been sold, worn grooves of habit, narrative endlessly retold from old ideas. Guilt lingers. Chaos is found, spinning wheels tread the same worn ground. See, our children are struggling, their voices unheard, lost in a maze of letters, every single word. Not my colleagues do I tear down in this, but practice to rebuild. And together we adapt with purpose fulfilled. And now the hills are becoming alive with the sound of decodable text instruction. And because we know better, we are doing better for our young beginning readers. We have aspirations for the year ahead, with steps in place already in order to prepare us for the necessary adaptations and changes that are to come, all of which are grounded in the science of reading body of knowledge. We continue to learn, unlearn and relearn, guided by a universal design for learning framework that attends to the diverse needs of all learners. Thanks very much for listening.
Excellent presentation, Chynel. I think it's just, I think your school are very lucky that you're the P1 teacher and that this is your problem of practice that you've got. And I think I would love you to come to our school and to talk about this. I too, when you were looking at what was currently in your school, you had 12% of decodable texts. Well, how do you see, with the barriers like financial constraints within our system, how do you see increasing that? Because are you going to buy the books? Are you going to buy online, or have you decided that, or have you a plan for that?
So we've kind of agreed with our staff and foundation, because we've been having a chat about this. We've already started, Rona, generating those decodable texts, and we have 4 or 5 resources which we're finding really, really good. So our next step for term 3 now is to meet as a key stage, and we're generating the texts and having them ready for next year, so that we're going to spend the first term using them, inserting them into our practice across the whole of foundation stage, because I need the data to then go to my principal and say, look, this is what we're seeing. Now, can we go and purchase, the particular scheme, which would give another way, another mode for the children. At the minute, we started off with paper copies, then we've moved to copies of decodable text that are audio supported. And we're thinking about how we can insert the decodable text instruction, but also make it very accessible for the diverse range of learners, that we have. So we have work to do on that, as well as decoding the text. We're thinking about how we're going to make them available to the children initially in school, and then looking ahead to the families, who obviously we're going to have to meet the parents on this journey too.
And I have to agree as well, because as a Key Stage 2 teacher, and I used to teach P2 at the foundation stage, there's a lot of expectation within the foundation stage that's where all the reading happens. That's where the, P1 and P2, possibly a little bit of P3, but by the time they come into P4, it should be done. I think reality is that's not the case. And they still, they need that. So I would like to know, in another couple of years, how that is impacted at the end of year, for the end of year, the scores that everybody looks at. Do you know what I mean? And I think it will have a positive effect, say in the 7 years, a longer term, vision. But no, thank you. Absolutely fantastic. Well done.
Thanks very much, Mona.